Cool. Good morning, everyone. Can you guys all hear me okay? Great. My name is Michael Affronti. I'm the VP of Product Development at Fuze, and hopefully you enjoyed our little intro video there. I'm excited to be here in London and speaking with you all today at the UC Expo. Can I get a quick shout out all the Fusers in the room? Can you guys raise your hands? Yeah, all right. Not as loud as I wanted it, but maybe it's the noise in the back. Anyway, thank you guys for all taking some time to talk with us today. We're going to explain a bit about Fuze's perspective on the future of work, some of my own perspective, and most importantly, we're joined by a wonderful set of folks who are going to share their perspective on the future of work. So before we start, I wanted to just take a quick jog down memory lane. So I've been obsessed with personal productivity and communications, oddly enough, since I was very little. Does anyone know who that is? Mr. Wizard, for those of you that grew up in the US? Okay. When I was about 5 years old, my mother would routinely find me sitting up in the kitchen at about 4:30 in the morning, eating cereal, watching reruns of Mr. Wizard. It was a science and technology show where he taught about how to understand how things work and ultimately how to take that knowledge and do something useful with it and make yourself more productive. So I've been obsessed, I think, since about year 5 with figuring out ways to take technology and make myself more productive. And I've been fortunate to work at companies and in technology areas where we can use that knowledge to make our customers more productive. So I've been blogging and talking with users all over the world around how can we embrace technology, everything from tiny little apps to the IoT devices that we wear, to help make ourselves more productive and more communicative. And especially given how remote some of us work now, I try to use technology to make sure I feel as connected as possible to my friends and family. Over the last 30 years, I've been fortunate to work on some really interesting technology products and some really impactful ones in terms of users. I've worked on programs like Outlook and Office 365 and a small company that I'll tell you a bit about, and most recently at Fuze, where I take a lot of the information and the personal productivity that I like to think about, and with some of the research that we've done across the globe, how do we synthesize that into a way to make tools that make your users more engaged and ultimately make you more productive at work? So before I joined Fuze, I was helping run a startup in New York City called Contactive. And what Contactive did was intercepted your phone calls and took the number and looked up the number across the open internet as well as public and private databases to present you with a dossier of who is calling you in less than 2 seconds. And the idea behind Contactive was to make you more productive by eliminating the guesswork of, am I talking to a customer or a client, a friend or a colleague? And what we've done since being acquired by Fuze is integrate that technology into the platform. But more importantly, when we were at Contactive, we were a highly distributed and remote team. We were only 15 people, but like many small startups, we had remote teams and some outsourced development. So on any given day, I was using Google Hangouts to talk to our designers. I was using Skype Consumer to talk to our Belarusian development team. I used JoinMe to do customer presentations. I used Viber because our CEO hated WhatsApp, and I used WhatsApp because our co-founder hated Viber, right? So I had this portfolio of applications that I used to get my work done, which I thought was actually quite unique. But the research that we've done here at Fuze and that we're going to walk you through with the panel today indicates that this idea of being productive with lots of little applications that do things really well is actually a very important trend that we need to pay attention to as we think about the future of work. More importantly, we need to think about how that collides into the needs of the new applications you'll develop and use at your companies. So perhaps the most important thing I want you to take away from today's talk, especially as we talk with the folks on the panel, is that 2025 is going to experience the most dynamic shift in the composition of the workforce since the Industrial Revolution. And we say this because we're backing it up with data. We've done a 9,000 user global study over the last year to help us understand what's actually happening with the future of work. By 2025, a predominant portion of the workforce will be a set of people, much like Don and Tanis here, who have never used a fax machine, who have never picked up a physical handset, and who have never actually done anything other than use video or text messaging. So what I ask of you today is to think about that seismic shift that's coming and try to understand, are you prepared for it with your companies, and how could some of the information we share today help you be more prepared? So allow us to have a bit of a conversation around that. So what I'd like to do now is actually not show you a picture of a bunch of broken chairs, that's for later. I'd like to have the panel introduce themselves. We'll go one by one. If you can introduce yourself, tell the audience a bit about who you are, and then share, if you could, your favorite communication apps that you use in your personal life. Okay? Don, if I could ask you to start? Yeah. Yeah. Oh, you can stay sitting, yeah.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Dawn. I'm 19 years of age, and I'm currently studying ICT at Farnborough College. Yep.
Great. What's your favorite app to use for personal? Yeah.
My favorite app to use on a daily basis is applications such as instant messaging, Snapchat, and Facebook Messenger. That's the two main ones I use on a daily basis to get everything done.
Great. Tanis?
Hi. Is that on? There we go. Yeah, hi, my name's Tanis. I'm at Farnborough College of Technology, doing an IT BTEC. I'm 19, and to be honest, most of the time, the applications that I use in my daily life is stuff like Facebook Messenger, Snapchat, or even like Gmail sometimes. But the kind of main app I use is instant messaging, just because it does everything, well, that every other system around does, but it does it instantly, which saves me time and also saves me money because it's just free and cheap. Yeah, don't really know what else to talk
Great.
about.
My name's Sean. I have an engineering background. I've worked in the energy industry for maybe the last 15 years. I tend to use apps in my personal life that help me keep up with friends, things that friends that I'm not quite so in touch with anymore are doing, so that I have to spend less time on the phone with them, which is quite embarrassing to admit. So I guess most commonly I use things like Instagram, Facebook Messenger, and WhatsApp to communicate with people.
Great.
Hello, I'm James Maunder. I'm 46, so I'm definitely the oldest member on the panel. I'm Director of Information and Digital Services at the Institute of Directors, where I lead a small team supplying everything to do with IT and digital to our 200 employees and our 30,000 members. In my personal life, my choice of communication mechanism really depends on who I'm talking to. So if it's my father, I'll tend to pick up the phone, or he's just discovered WhatsApp, so I'll use WhatsApp with him. With most of my friends, it's instant messaging or email.
Great. Thank you. So quite a diverse and representative technology panel based on some of the information that we're already showing you. So we're going to explore some of the perspective that we've taken from our research and have the panel provide their feedback. So if I could turn it back to you all and ask you, starting with Don and Tanis, what are your expectations when you start working in terms of communicating? How do you expect to communicate with your coworkers? What do you expect that to be like?
From my current year experience, from my work placement, I know that I had to move around a lot. If someone rang me, I would have to give it to my manager. And I would have to walk to other staff members in order to get them to help me with something, or in order to show them the issue that I'm having. But my expectations would be some sort of mobile communication would take place. Like if we have some type of instant messaging within the workplace, then we can message our managers or the staff members we need and show them what our issue, the problem we're facing, and get the help much quicker.
Yeah, so a focus on instant messaging and mobility. Yeah. Tanis, do you think that's similar, or?
Hello, there you go. Yeah, mine's quite similar, to be honest. From work placement and small amount of contract work that I've done, my expectation is that communication is spread over a few different kind of technologies. So you've got phone calls and stuff like video calls and stuff like that for kind of longer conversations or with groups of people. And then you've got email for just shorter messages or kind of sending attachments, which seems to me kind of quite disorganized, but I guess it seems to be working, so I guess I'll have to adapt to that a bit. But yeah, that's just my expectation at the moment from what I've seen and my own personal experiences so far. Yeah.
Okay, that's great. And Sean, if I could ask you to maybe talk a bit about what it's like right now to be in the workforce and what is communicating like in your office?
Yeah, sure. So actually, in the 15 years that I've been employed, it's been interesting to see how much change there's been in the type of communication, hardware and systems that we use. When I originally entered employment, all I really had on my desk was a desktop computer and a landline phone. It was very difficult to get a mobile phone, whereas now as soon as you start employment, you're assigned with a mobile telephone. Over the last 5 years, though, I'd say that now what we really use to communicate on a day-to-day basis, both internally within our organisation and externally, are video conferencing apps. We tend to use video conferencing apps to call people at desks in different offices, to host meetings with people all over the globe. And it's now rare that we use our mobile telephones at all unless we are out of the office away from a computer link. I've also found that the types of computer system that we use have changed. It's very rare that I'll leave the office now with my laptop computer. I have an iPad that I travel with, and I rely on the apps that are included in that to help me to communicate when I'm out of the office.
That makes sense. And James, could I ask you to talk a bit about, as a manager at the IOD, how do you guys think about that sort of top-down communications, and what applications do you use?
I think for top-down communications, it's traditional email and it's traditional town hall meetings where you get employees together and ensure that there is the personal touch. Where we struggle is we have a very London-centric presence, but we also have regional offices across the UK which may have 2 to 5 people in them, and we use fairly traditional video conferencing type facilities to disseminate the messages to them. On the future of work, though, what I think is interesting, I have a lot of sympathy for what Dawn and Tanis have said around, I think the modern workplace is built around the concept of mobility. And where we, the IOD Institute of Directors is a not-for-profit organisation. It's 110 years old, so we have a real legacy backlog of technology change and culture change, and getting the organisation to a place where it accepts that work is measured by the value you add and the outputs that you drive, rather than the amount of time you spend present in the office, is a big challenge.
Yeah. The focus on mobility is something that I think is again, another key takeaway for everyone here today. As an interesting data point at Fuze, if you know about our business, we spent about a decade helping our customers move from on-premise PBXs into the cloud, and over the last 5 years have added in a full unified communications portfolio. When we first started out, 95% of our deployments with customers were around using desk phones, some form of a Polycom or a Yealink. As of today, something like 65 or 70% of our deployments are using soft phones, and year over year, there's about a 10% increase in the number of deployments we're doing that are soft phone only. So when a customer is moving to Fuze, they're choosing to eschew using desk phones at all and move towards a soft phone only environment to start to leverage more of mobility and laptop-based flexibility. Okay, now my picture of broken chairs. During the research we did to put together the Beyond 2020 perspective, one of our researchers was at a university on the west coast of the US during move-in week. And in the hallways of the dorms, there were piles of desks from the dorm rooms that the students, as they were moving in, were throwing out into the hallway. And the researcher went and asked one of the students, why are you doing that? And they said, well, I never work alone at my desk at home or in high school. I use the common areas to go work with my friends. And they literally were just throwing the desks out of the dorm room. And we managed to talk to some of the building management, and they said, yeah, this happened last year as well, and they're considering just taking the desks out of the dormitory rooms entirely. So this idea that the workplace of the future is not this solitary desk that, at least when I was a kid, was meant to support a 72-pound CRT. The workplace of the future is something that's highly mobile and highly flexible. But what we found that's really fascinating is that the current workforce thinks about flexible work as a privilege or something that you earn, whereas some of the emerging workforce thinks about it as an expectation about the way that they will work in their new companies. So if I could ask the panel here to talk a bit about your perspective on flexibility and work. And again, I'll start with Don and Tanis. What are your expectations when you get to work after school in terms of being flexible with the way that you work?
I would have to say I would expect more. So this is for the future when I get to work. Yeah, I would expect more accessibility, as in I can take my work away from my actual work office. I would say there should be a way to like take my work home, be flexible, communicate with my staff and members, and work mobile from home. That's my main expectations that I expect from a workplace. They implement some type of system to allow me to work away from my office.
Great. Tanis, same question, please.
Yeah, mine, again, like quite similar, is that I guess I kind of expect to be able to work from anywhere. Like being able to take my work home, being able to work from the office if I need to, being able to work even on the move. So if I'm going somewhere else, like going between offices, even then, like going on the train, just working on my train into work. Just because it's kind of when you're going to be thinking about it, so you might as well make a start on it, even like wherever you're going. And I guess the flexibility just needs to be there so that whatever happens, you've got some way to access something. So in the middle of the night, if there's a problem, you're not out of reach from solving it. You don't have to wait until 9 o'clock the next day to start working on a problem. If it's a dire emergency, you can be working on it anyway. And I guess it's changing the out of office to stop meaning out of reach. Out of office should just mean even if it takes a little longer to reply, you're still going to be able to work, or still going to be able to do what you need to do, even without being in the physical office.
Yeah, it changes the meaning of do not disturb, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Sean, if I could, same question. What is it like in your organization right now in terms of flexible work? And is that something that you use?
Yeah, well, I'm actually here now because we have a very good flexible working policy in my company. But it's very similar to what you just outlined, really your expectations. I work for a Norwegian company. They have a very positive, flexible working arrangement where they're very positive to you working in the location that most suits you, provided you're able to complete the work that you need to do within the time frame that you do it. So at the moment it's very much at manager's discretion, and you have to be able to communicate exactly where you're going to be and why you think you can still continue to work in that way. If we have formal meetings, then obviously we have to make an effort to come into the office in order to be there and meet people face to face. But other than that, for day-to-day working, where we're reviewing documents, where we're taking telephone calls, where we're having video conference meetings that we can join from home, we can work from anywhere, and that's accepted.
Do you find that, do you use video more often than just audio for conferencing, or? Yeah, you.
Yeah. I usually video most days for people that I would usually just have a telephone conversation with. So video apps have replaced picking up the phone to give someone a call now. We have face-to-face conversations over laptop computers and iPads wherever we're working.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. James, same question, similar style. Like, how do you work with flexible work schedules and work styles at the IOD?
Well, I think the IOD, to my knowledge, doesn't have a flexible working policy, but we do have a fairly young workforce. And so there is an expectation around flexibility. And certainly what I see when we hire new people into the organization is there is an expectation that people will be able to use the technology they want to be able to use to do their jobs the way they want to do their jobs. And so provided people perform and they deliver what they're supposed to deliver, we allow people, even allow is the wrong word, people work from home people home from work, and I like to think we get the best out of the workforce in that way. I think one of the things the IOD, though, has been very hot on recently is around the subject of mental health. And I think while we focus on the outputs of work and we encourage flexibility in working, we also have to give people the tools and the tips and the self-discipline to be able to switch off, really switch off, so they can renew themselves, refresh themselves, and be ready for the next challenge. Being able to work flexibly shouldn't mean always on, day or night.
Yeah, this is what we were talking about earlier, is
Exactly.
when does it ever end, right? And how much
Yeah.
stress does that add? I think
Yeah.
it's an important part of the balance. So the last stat that I'll leave you all with before we talk a bit about, before we talk a bit about how Fuze is adapting to some of this, is adoption, right? And I think what's interesting to note, if you've been to this conference for a few years in a row, or Enterprise Connect in Orlando, is that these conferences started out as mostly hardware conferences, right? Circuits, network devices, and those are still here, but if you look at the demos that are happening across, and including what we're doing at the Fuze booth, it's all about end user experience. And what we find is that 76% of IT leaders believe that the success of an actual application deployment inside their organization relies on the end user actually wanting to use it. Because 5 or 6 years ago, you could mandate that, but now honestly, if Fuze doesn't work when we deploy it, Tanis is just going to pick up his phone and use FaceTime to talk to Don. And that's what we're competing with. So we have an infrastructure challenge to work with our customers to build up their network, but now we have an end user adoption issue, and that's one of the reasons why it's very important to think that through. So if I could ask James this time, when you guys roll out new technology at your company or at your organization, like, how do you think about adoption, and what do you do specifically to make that better?
Well, I want to know who the 24% are. Because the 24% of IT leaders who clearly don't worry about their users, I would suggest, are in the wrong role. The user is king or queen. You know, the user is the person who uses the technology, and we're all users. They are everything, and the expectation today is consumer grade. So if when we roll out a communications platform, it comes with a thick booklet on how to use it, then we failed. I think the key challenge is getting people over the legacy ways of working. People are so used to clunky communication systems, a desk phone and a mobile phone and corporate email and personal email and applications and instant messaging, and somehow in this brain of ours, we've got to bring it all together. That clunkiness is so ingrained in the way people work every day, that's what we have to get people over, but it should be a zero training footprint.
Tanis, when was the last time that you downloaded an app and actually went to the help guide before you started using it?
It was probably a long time ago, if I'm honest. A lot of apps that I use especially, the user kind of process is just built into them. So just by looking at them and kind of with some common sense, you can work out what each thing does.
Yeah.
Like on Messenger, the button to get to the call menu is a phone,
right?
Because it's intuitive, and it lets you, without needing to read anything or without having to kind of process much, you know what each thing does. And I think that's something that I'm hoping for when I go into industry, is that I'm not going to have to go through a long 3-week training course just to be able to use the core systems built within the company.
Right.
Like I'm kind of almost expecting to not have limitations. I don't want to be having to make compromises just to do basic communications within the company.
Yeah.
From my point, I don't think that's an efficient way to be working if you have to compromise with everything you do at the most basic level of the company. So I think having an intuitive design is kind of the entire part about the success of technology. I honestly don't understand that 24% that thought user satisfaction is nothing.
Right.
It's user satisfaction is the success from what I can see and from my expectations going through. If users aren't satisfied, then it's not really accomplishing any goals.
Right. Yeah. No compromises. I think Tanis said it best. when we think about what we're doing at Fuze, and when we think about addressing some of the data points that we talked about today, the most important thing that we think about is how do we make sure that the people that buy our solution are actually using it. So we think very deeply about how to unify the disparate parts of the communication stack to make them more adoptable, and to throw direct feedback to what Tanis was saying. We think a lot about adoption. We think a lot about end user experience design. We think a lot about the ergonomics of how far is the answer button from the edge of a screen, because on a larger iPhone 7 Plus, it's actually hard to get to with your thumb. We also think about data to help us inform the best way to tune the experience, so that just like a consumer app, we don't lose Dawn or Tanis as their first few days at work and they're logging into our application. We want to make sure they don't fall out of the onboarding funnel, because we think it's critical that in those first few days they have a really great user experience. And I think from an application development standpoint, that helps us think about Fuze. But I think as IT leaders, you must think about are the tools you're buying, are they adoptable, are they engaging, and do they make the emerging workforce that's coming in very soon excited to come to work and to collaborate? So I would thank you everyone for the time you spent with us today. Hopefully you found the panel informative. We'll be at the Fuze booth for the rest of the day if you have any further questions. And again, thank you so much.